if you've been released and you are expected to be a productive member of society, let's get you productive. Let's have you contributing to your community. When you are helping make decisions to better your community, for your family, for your neighbor, for your fellow human, isn't that something that is going to make you feel better about participating in that society in other ways? Of course it is. So let's get you voting, let's get you participating, let's get you really, really engaging.
The full and free exercise of our sacred right and duty to vote is more important in the long run than the personal hopes or ambitions of any candidate for any office in the land.
You're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, an insider's look at election administration hosted by Brianna Lennon and Eric Fay.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of High Turnout, Wide Margins. I am Eric Fay, Director of Elections in St. Louis County, Missouri, with my co-host,
Brianna Lennon, County Clerk in Boone County, Missouri.
And today our guest is
Michelle Kavanaugh, County Clerk, Bernalillo County, New Mexico.
So you are our first New Mexican on the podcast, where we just have a couple states left to cross off the list. So this is very exciting for us. Our first question with every guest is, how did you get into elections? What's your election origin story?
How much time do you have? That is only kind of a joke because I do tend to ramble, but I grew up in politics. My parents are public servants, as they say. My mom was a teacher for 20 years, and my dad was an attorney and later a judge. So my dad was campaigning when I was a kid. I was out there on the sidewalk holding signs for him as a kid. My mom ran for state senate and state school board and then state representative. She actually did end up winning. That was when I was an adult. She was the state teacher, American Federation of Teachers president for several years, and then the first female Latina New Mexico Federation of Labor president. They were the state arm of the AFL-CIO. So I have politics in the blood, I have labor in the blood, and I have campaigning in the blood. I was on the campaign side for many, 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 many years. I think organizing really ultimately is in the blood and is my passion. I was an organizer for AFT New Mexico for a while. I was an organizer for Working America, and I don't know if you guys know what that is, but they were basically the working people arm of the AFL-CIO. So anybody who didn't fit into like a traditional labor union could join Working America and kind of all band together to fight for the same things that traditional union members could fight for, kind of more on a global scale. Everybody deserves, breaks and weekends and all the same sorts of things, and just because you aren't a teacher or a firefighter or a plumber, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to join together and use your collective power. So anyway, I did that. And I also volunteered for Rock the Vote when I was a little baby of 18, 19, 20, and was in love with Tom Morello, which was a big help. And so, I was the kind of person also who said, if you don't vote, don't complain, and, stop whining about things if you can't even be bothered. And, as I've grown up and learned a little bit more and matured, I've come to realize that it's not really that simple, and there are lots of reasons why people don't vote. I realized that like I said, it's not that simple. There's a lot more to it than just not caring. And one of my goals now as the county clerk is to address those reasons. So then I worked for several years as a field representative for our senior senator, U.S. Senator Tom Udall, in New Mexico, who later became after he retired, the U.S. ambassador to New Zealand and American Samoa. And as a Lord of the Rings fan, that was very exciting. I planned to spend most of my time down there, and then he went and left when Joe Biden was no longer president, and I never got to go. So that is very, very sad.
So he owes you a trip.
He owes me a trip to New Zealand, absolutely, absolutely. Through my work through Tom Udall, I was able to connect with a lot of people who I had maintained contact with, through my entire life. There were all these people who I made contact with through labor, through Democratic Party politics, through all of these different roles that I'm so, so lucky to have had. I made all these contacts, and the then county clerk said, hey, I have a great idea for you. Your boss, Tom Udall, is retiring. Come be my deputy. So I became the deputy county clerk in Bernalillo County, and I did that for 4 years. She said, you should really think about running. I think it would be great for you. And I said, not a chance in heck. I think that is a terrible idea. I'm a behind-the-scenes person. And then as time got closer and closer, I said, well, it's actually not the worst idea. I love the job, and voting is my passion. I think it's a great, noble idea. And so eventually she broke me, and running for office was the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life, not being a particularly outgoing person. It was really, really hard, but I did win, and now I'm the clerk, and I have had the chance to really implement a lot of really cool ideas. So I love it. I love doing the job. The idea of having to run again in 2 years is terrifying, but I'll do it because I'm not done.
So can you, just for, I think, context and frame of reference, explain your county, how large it is, the major cities that are in it and things like that? So we are at Pledge, I don't think we mentioned that earlier, which is a conference in Fort Lauderdale where the convening is mostly of larger election jurisdictions.
So Bernalillo County is the largest county in New Mexico, and we have over 600,000 people who live there. The amount of registered voters is about 400 and some thousand. The amount of people who actually vote in any given year is about 400,000. Albuquerque is the main city in Bernalillo County. There's a lot of little tiny communities that make up the rest of Bernalillo County, and a lot of unincorporated area. There is a town of Bernalillo that is not located in Bernalillo County. That's actually located in Sandoval County, not Bernalillo County. And one of the frustrating things kind of about Bernalillo County is that being so big in kind of a sea of really, really rural counties, there aren't a lot of places in New Mexico that share some of the struggles that we have and some of the issues that we face. So it's really, really nice being able to come to a conference like Pledge, where other large jurisdictions can commiserate or brainstorm or, kind of talk about the issues that we face. And so it's really, really neat being able to come here and talk to other places about some of the issues that we face.
And just, I know the job is multifaceted, but just in a synopsis, what do county clerks in New Mexico do? What are you responsible for in your role?
Sure. So across the country, clerks, clerk recorders, and, recorders, they're called different things. They do different things. In New Mexico, county clerks, there are 33 counties in New Mexico. We tend to have two sides in each of our offices. Now, on one side, we have recording and filing, and on that side, we issue marriage licenses. We also do property filing, recording of deeds, recording of, whatever somebody chooses to file. We will record just about anything you could possibly want, as long as you pay a $25 fee. We will record it for you. We have people recording sovereign citizen documents and, divorce decrees and, just whatever people want to file, we will file it for them. Real estate documents, warranty deeds and liens and that sort of thing. Lots and lots of real estate documents. Like I said, marriage licenses, we do probably the most of on that side of the house. And then we have a Bureau of Elections, and that's kind of the sexy side of the clerk's office, the side that gets the most attention, really. Although I would say that the recording and filing side is really the busier side throughout the year. They really don't ever slow down. But elections is the attention getter, really, of the two. We run the election. We run statewide elections, general elections, municipal elections, special elections. In New Mexico, municipalities can choose to opt in to have the counties run their elections. So cities can say, we would really like the county to run our election. We are wiping our hands of it. We don't want to deal with it. Can the county run this election for us? Not all of them do. There are some who say, we really want to keep this close to the vest. Another kind of big city, the city of Rio Rancho, is in Sandoval County, and I think that they have, for years and years and years, done it themselves. And I believe that I heard that this year is the first year in, I think, 40 years of their incorporation that they are opting to have Sandoval County run their election. So good for them. It's a little more work for Sandoval County, but I think Sandoval County has the resources, or the counties have the resources, the experience, and kind of the manpower to do it, and it frees up the municipality to do other things because everybody's super busy. And
do they have to pay you all to run those elections?
Sure do. Yes, they do. So what'll happen is the municipality will pay us. And we've got to pay for our temps, we got to pay for our equipment, we got to pay for all of that good stuff. And then usually the state will then reimburse us for a lot of those expenses as well.
Hello, I'm Eric Fay, Director of Elections in St. Louis County, Missouri, and you're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, a podcast where we explore local election administration.
Speaking of kind of the structure of elections, and we've kind of touched on it in conversations before recording, but there have been a ton of reforms that have really opened up a lot of things in New Mexico, which I think it's fascinating anyway, just from the perspective of there's not that many reforms happening right now that open things up and have granted automatic rights back to felons and moved primaries to a more open status. So I'm wondering, it's probably a two-part question, and you can pick whichever part you want to answer, but what's driving some of this election reform, and also what impact is it going to have on your office?
Sure, those are both really great questions. So we're really lucky. New Mexico is a really progressive state. We have a Democratic governor. Our legislature is majority Democrat on both the Senate and the House sides. And our delegation, our federal delegation, is all 5 members are Democratic, and all of our congresswomen are women. We have our 2 senators are men, but they're both pretty progressive. We've focused quite a bit in the last several years on early childhood education, on prison reform, on mental health care reform, behavioral health care. So we're really, as a state, focusing on how to overcome a lot of the generational struggles and cyclical issues that we have had as a state. There is a lot of poverty in New Mexico. There are a lot of generational issues that we are having to overcome. We're a minority majority state. We have multiple pueblos and reservation land, and we're very isolated with the mountains. So there's a lot of poverty. And so luckily with this progressive population in our elected leadership, they're really working on making good policy. And so I think that what's happening is, bleeding into all areas of legislation, including election legislation. So this last year, we have passed semi-open primaries, which is very, very exciting. And what's really cool is that it doesn't actually affect anything until July of 2026. So we have a full, 18 months really to develop it, to make it look right, to make it work right, and to really get those details down solidly. So we have a good amount of time to plan and make it work right before we actually have to implement it. We have automatic voter registration through the motor vehicle division. I think most places call it DMV. We call it MVD because we're New Mexico. We got to do it a little different. So folks are automatically registered to vote when they get their driver's license or go in and renew their information. And if they don't want to be automatically registered, they have to opt out. It's not an opt-in, it's an opt-out. So they get mailed a card later where they have to actually put in the work and say, I don't actually want that. I'm going to opt out of this. And they have to, work to say, I don't want to be registered. So we're putting the onus on them to, say that I don't want to participate in this democracy. That's another really neat thing. And like you were saying, we also are allowing felons who have been released from incarceration the ability to vote after they've been released. That one has a couple of extra steps that we're having to figure out logistically, but they're being allowed to vote once they've been released, which is hugely important. These reforms are so important, and people shouldn't be defined by the worst mistake that they've ever made in their lives. None of us should be defined that way. And if you've paid your debt to society, you shouldn't be punished for that for the rest of your life. And if you've been released and you are expected to be a productive member of society, let's get you productive. Let's have you contributing to your community. When you are helping make decisions to better your community, for your family, for your neighbor, for your fellow human, isn't that something that is going to make you feel better about participating in that society in other ways? Of course it is. So let's get you voting, let's get you participating, let's get you really, really engaging.
Speaking of public perception, I want to go back for a second to the open primary or semi-open primary. Missouri we don't have mandatory party affiliation on our voter registration, which is unusual. I think if you're going to have party affiliation, you're either going to require it or not. And I have read things about one of the reasons New Mexico's somewhat open primary has come into play is because there are so many people that are choosing to be affiliated as independent or not affiliated at all, which I think is something that bears out in Missouri too. What, if any, I guess, public perception have you felt in your role of whether people are kind of stepping back from wanting to be kind of affiliated with any party at all? Have you heard that from voters? Have you heard that people have been updating their registration to be unaffiliated, or they just don't have any interest? I don't know if that has changed your actual practices for things, but what have you felt from hearing that?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like every year we're seeing it go up and up and up. I couldn't tell you exactly what the number is right now, but we are seeing major increase in the number of independent voters, decline to states. And people always ask me, what do you think is the reason for the decline to states increasing so much? Because it's a pretty substantial increase year over year. And we're seeing it more on the Democrat side, quite honestly. And there are a lot of reasons for it. And I can only speculate, but I don't know if I should on this thing. But folks' confidence in the political parties, that's not news to anybody. Folks have trust issues with their parties, and I don't know. There's so many reasons.
I think it's really interesting that the legislation took that into account. I guess the elections administration infrastructure as a whole depends on there being, in most states, a two-party system. You have to have Republicans and Democrats at polling places. You have to have bipartisanship. And when we're seeing people that are no longer wanting to be affiliated with either of those, it has a lasting impact on how elections administration happens. And so for an outsider looking at New Mexico opening up primaries, seems like a positive recognition that, hey, we can't keep doing what we're doing and still getting everybody to participate, because if they're choosing not to affiliate, we have to come up with a way for them to be able to vote. And they recognized that and made that difference, which I think is unique. There's not a lot of states that are taking that into account, like the practicalities of it. So have you heard, I guess, from some of those voters that they are happy that they're no longer going to have to be in a closed primary situation?
They're extremely happy. The process before was that those independent voters were having to change their political party immediately before the primary, and then they could change it right back after the primary passed and after the books had reopened. And that was a pain in the butt for them. And so this obviously will remove some of that legwork for them, which in turn will increase their participation. And so we definitely see that as a good thing. Although the folks who are independent, I think are generally going to be more inclined to participate anyway. So they're very, very excited. They're very excited. I've gotten a lot of calls recently from folks who are very curious as to how it's going to work, and with people who are now going to be on the permanent absentee list, which is also a new thing. They're wondering, well, how is that going to work, and what ballot am I going to get sent, and how do you know which one I'm going to want, and when is that going to get decided, and when are those going to be mailed out? And so that's some of the stuff that we're trying to work through right now and discuss with the Secretary of State. So again, we're really lucky that we have some time before we have to really have all of that decided. And I really hope that this helps drive participation for, your 18 to 30s, because their participation right now is pretty dismal. And not that that's anything new. I mean, I was with Rock the Vote in 1998 to 2001, and that was our goal then, was getting people to vote. That's why they were created, was because young people weren't voting, and we're still facing the same issue.
You've been listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, a podcast that explores local election administration. I'm your host, Eric Fay, alongside Brianna Lennon. A big thanks to KBIA and the Election Center for making this podcast possible. Our managing editor is Rebecca Smith, managing producer is Aaron Hay, our associate producer is Katie Quinn, and our digital producer is Mark Johnson. This has been High Turnout, Wide Margins. Thanks for listening.